Boom, 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 bop, bop, boop, 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 bippity, bop, bop, doop, bop. Should I just doo-wop the whole thing? Hello. Howdy. Welcome, viewers who are not watching me live, to the show. You have to wait a little bit. Alright, let's get this sorted out here with what we're going to talk about tonight. I do this thing, I edit it. Alright, so this will be, looks like a show for posterity. Yes, I realize I'm very many days late. What's up, Shelton? I normally do Sunday shows, but, you know, what else? It's been a busy week at work and life, so, you know. Just wait around. So, tonight's little thing, we're going to do some talking about some stuff, like we do on the shows. Anybody, if you have any questions? Oh yeah, that's right, I'm trying to be more professional. My name is Roy. Welcome to Escaping Dystopia. Here, we will give advice and news so you can escape the hell we are in. Yeah. So we'll talk about that a little bit. So let me run through real quick for anybody who wants to catch up what we're going to talk about tonight. A little bit about our Senate and the votes today on what's going on with that. The intelligence community versus the Donald. Of course, intelligence and Donald are difficult things. The immigration situation, which is not a happy or funny thing. The police state that we live in, the trans military, and Trump, of course. These are the tweets. We heard about the tweets. North Korea and China, they're also around. Russia, the latest. A little bit from some science stuff. The moon will pass. So say this was the sun, right? And then it's like, and actually it's not. They're the same size, kind of. Anyway, the eclipse, we'll talk about that a little bit. What tomorrow's distraction will likely be, and what we can all do about it, of course. That's always fun to talk about. But yeah, anybody, of course, if you have anything to say or chime in with anything, you can always do so, because that makes things a lot more fun for me. Of course, we're a little bit late tonight, so I think everybody's already asleep, so. Tease what's a tease? I was going to see maybe we get a little different, you know, late night. It's a little bit looser with the late night crowd, so. We're going to have some fun with it. And as always, like I said, feel free to jump in. My name's Roy. I'll be your host for the evening. So today, the Senate of the United States, and yesterday was a little rough too. They had the whole thing. There's been a lot of crushed hearts today because a lot of people, and a number of people I actually like and listen, like to read about, and people whose opinions on politics I respect them and interested in. We're quite impressed with Mr. McCain's speech yesterday. Less so with some of his votes following that speech. So they started debate on what they can possibly call a bill, an Obamacare repeal bill. They might end up doing something that is essentially like Mitch McConnell writing down repeal Obamacare on a piece of paper, and they all vote on that. And if they can get 50 votes and Pence can break the tie, then they'll send that to the House of Representatives, who will then vote on the same bill. And then they'll go to the reconciliation, and see who wins on that. So that the fact that they're already doing this kind of weird debate stuff is just, it's so strange. And I know a lot of people don't care to talk about politics much, but the way that the law is being made in our country is extremely problematic. We can't. I mean, and this was part of the whole thing about McCain's speech. We can't keep doing this, but then he goes along and does it. So it needs to be, and this is an opinion I was talking about a little bit earlier. I think this is this kind of complete dysfunction when Republicans are in control of everything, and they still can't get anything done. it's how do you blame anybody else for this? And it becomes one of those things that's very difficult. And this is, the attacks on the media are so immense, and that's part of what I think we'll get to that a little bit later. But this is how we find out about this world, and they're not. This is big, important stuff, and it's completely and utterly dysfunctional. They're voting on bills that don't even know they don't even exist really, and they're like, oh well, maybe this one or maybe this one. How about this thing? And this is throwing just whatever against the wall for the lives of millions of people, and it's extremely disheartening and very, very, very different from what we saw last time when the Democrats were running things. And again, this idea, and one of the things that I think is still one of the most cynical and destructive ideas in American politics, is that both sides are the same, because it's absurd. It's just one of those not even really worth entertaining as a rational thought per se. And now, of course, we have another example of it. Anybody who's lived through consecutive alternate administrations understands this, who follows politics closely. A lot of people don't, because they're so cynical about the whole thing. But anyway, so they haven't passed anything yet. They keep failing utterly to do anything. But they're going to try and do next is what I was saying. It's called the skinny repeal. It basically gets rid of the individual mandate, the business mandate, and some lobbyist taxes that some people don't like. So they're going to try and do that, I think, tomorrow. That's the skinny repeal. You'll hear a lot about that tomorrow. If they do that, that'll go right to the House, and they'll send it to the president's desk with something so that he can claim complete and total victory. One of the strategies that he uses, and you'll see this, is basically to pick every single position at one point or another, and then whatever ends up happening, he gets to claim to be right, and because he can't really be held accountable for anything that he says or does, which again we'll get to in a moment, so what does it matter? He gets to always claim to be right because nobody will call bullshit on him. So, speaking of calling bullshit on somebody who always claims to be right when they're wrong, topic number 2 this evening is our intelligence community versus Trump. So this is a real thing that I think is happening. There's a lot of stuff that keeps coming out about what's going on, and I think a lot of news organizations know a little bit more than they have been saying as they try to confirm various things and whatnot. Like Kislyak reported back to Moscow that Sessions and he talked about the campaign, like that kind of stuff, right? Like where, well, we were monitoring Kislyak's conversations, and there's Jeff Sessions talking to him, and Kislyak's reporting back to Moscow about what they talked about, and Jeff Sessions can't seem to remember what it was that we discussed. I think it was at the campaign. I don't remember. So the intelligence community is kind of calling bullshit on a lot of this stuff. Not that a lot of this is necessarily nefarious, that there was actual communication that, I don't think Sessions would ever be dumb enough to try and set up some sort of campaign quid quo. Yeah, my Latin sucks. I do think that something happened at that dinner, but we'll see what happens. I think there's also a couple other things. So, I think the Justice Department is going to try and get to the bottom of that, although now, of course, we have this big focus on the intelligence community. This interdepartmental warfare, I think, is part of Bannon's plan as well. I think the longer that Trump stays in the presidency, the more dangerous the situation becomes, because this deconstruction of the administrative state, which is to say, to destroy the notion that we have 3 branches of government and, they're all separate in a democracy, is real. I mean, if you look at what's happening at the State Department, and I know this is really dry and interesting stuff, but they're tearing it apart. So a lot of the, people who have dedicated their lives to giving information to the U.S. government about what's going on in the world, in the intelligence community, is in a situation where they're, kind of a little bit sketchy about reporting on what's going on or risking their life to provide that information when you have ultimately a decision maker who's not really listening or paying attention to a lot of the intelligence briefings, and appears to, for all intents and purposes, be definitely influenced at least by a foreign power. So there's the breakdown there, and so we're still very much in completely abnormal space. The abnormality, I think, of the Senate is really just, it's difficult to watch because it's making me a little bit more cynical about it, but just because it just keeps going on, and this is so obviously bad, and so, I mean, it's a new level of dysfunction. So I don't know what's going to happen on that. I think they might try to do this skinny thing now, because I do think they're still going to pass something. But the failures that they had today were huge. I mean, this is we're going to repeal Obamacare. We're going to repeal and replace Obamacare. That's what they've run on for the entire Obama years, and it failed today. That's a big story. Anyway, and the intelligence community is a big part of that. Sorry, we went back to that. Anyway, the intelligence community not liking Trump is a big and real thing, and it will continue. So we're going to continue to get some good links and stuff. The flailing sucks, and the thing why it sucks so bad, and there's a lot of theoretical damage, but there's some real actual damage. The story that came out of, I had this in the New Yorker about the ICE guy who was talking to the reporter and finally was like, yeah, I'll go on record. You can say what I'm saying. That our immigration and custom enforcement, ICE is, when they reorganized that after 9/11 and put that name on it, I was like, this is going to be bad, because once this group goes bad, their whole putting people on ICE is going to be a real thing that they say, and it sounds like the kind of people that are moving into that, when they do a big hire, right, and start to do all this enforcement and hire 5,000, 10,000 new people, that's the kind of people who start to come into the situation. And that's really dangerous. Again, as the longer this continues to go on, the more dangerous. It compounds over time as they take over. So, which is why kind of the outrage police, in a sense, I think we need to focus on action, and we'll get to that a little bit. The truck thing, there's in San Antonio, they had a story on NPR and a few other places, of course, today. There were over 100 people in the back of this truck, and 10 of them were dead, and they'd been left there in a parking lot at a Walmart. It's a big 18-wheeler. Apparently, one of the things that was also remarkable about this situation, the 10-day, I mean, again, this is like serial killer style, number of people dying, trying to find a better life for themselves and their family, working dirt. Apparently a lot of these people we were actually already across the border, and this is one of the last legs to come across the second border of all the checkpoints that are now happening in the country. As this continues to happen, and with Sessions and Trump leading the charge, we will move to not having just the two borders, but basically a total border kind of country, which moves us into this next thing. And we had another police state update, although this was one of those strange ones, because there was the shooting in Minneapolis, I believe, in Minnesota, where apparently it's now this woman slapped a police car, I guess. And so the cops shot her and killed her. Previously, there was a loud noise, was all we had heard, and apparently it's a tough situation, because there's both that happening, and then you also have in New York, there have been a number of stories about people executing the police. And there's not ever, and I don't think, and this is what I think some people who talk about this stuff sometimes miss a little bit, there's never, I don't think, an intent of evil on a lot of this stuff from a lot of the police unions, especially the ones that get publicized. It just, that stuff there's not the intent on that, but on the other side, from the police side, there is a lot of intent for those that have executed police in a number of cities across this country. That kind of, almost, it's not, we don't want open warfare on the police when we have a police state. And we've been like this since 9/11, and this is what's difficult. This is why, again, the show's called Escaping Dystopia, folks. We need to roll back the police state totally, and Obama did a good job like pushing that back and having an attorney general and having the infrastructure that wanted to roll back that police state and help build this more free, just society. Again, folks, who you vote for matters. There's a huge difference even amongst the parties, and the parties shift by who's a part of them. And we have the big disconnect that I think in this country is that a lot of people don't want to be a part of the parties to make a choice as that, but that's who has a lot of the control. But that's how our government is now set up to work and function. There's some great pieces on this. If anybody's curious, I can direct you towards one, why the parties work essentially under the sketchy outlines of a government that exists under our Constitution. But our Constitution allows for a lot of stuff on the edges, and we've moved, I think, and I think we've been in a police state. It's just a matter of who enforces the laws, and whether or not we all really feel it, and how much it shows up and happens. Which brings us to the tweets this morning. For anybody who is confused about Trump's stance on the LGBT community, just look to his vice president. This question was answered during the campaign. He was lying about being a defender and all this stuff because it made the politics that he needed at the time work better. And then when he puts Pence on the ticket, no. So the time that this came out, I do think this was part of, again, you have Republicans running for nearly a decade on this notion of repeal and replace Obamacare, including the president himself. And then today decides to change the policy for transgender people in the military. Currently, according to what I've seen, there's anywhere from 250 to 6,000 to 10,000. I think the 250 is active serving people. And this is a policy review that Obama wanted to change. They were supposed to put it in at the beginning of July, and Mattis delayed it. And so this morning at 3, 4 o'clock on this day when the Senate's voted on all this repeal and replace stuff, the president throws out this red meat. And this is red meat for a lot of folks. I do think this is part of Bannon's general media strategy to play people like this. To change a policy, make this, it's, I've had this discussion a few times and with a few people. Excuse me. And I don't know how much we can let this just be something that leads people around by the nose. Because unless we see, and again, they wouldn't even answer today at the press briefing, any details, anything about, it was, go ask the Department of Defense. The Department of Defense, we've never heard of this, go ask the White House. And so this is not like when President Obama or President Clinton or President Bush or any president you ever remember announced a policy similar to this. It was not, I would like to at some point make this happen, unless they're in a campaign. We have now a president who is in a campaign. He literally has already filed for running for president in 2020. He's running for office. This was a campaign promise and a campaign thing. If you look at what he's been doing with his speeches and his campaigns, he hasn't changed much at all. And he likes that. So he's going to keep campaigning. It's not real policy until they actually can do real policy. And real policy takes having these people in place to implement it. There's a number of things that came out when people fighting against the policy change. But I think people just need to, one, calm down a little bit on that and focus on what we're going to do, because he can throw out this red meat any day of the week. And if we can go into a tizzy on this, that, and the other when he decides whatever, and then somebody later will be like, oh, well, I changed my mind. I read another study. Because, again, there's not... He said he discussed this with his National Security Council, which was Bannon and a couple other people. He's kind of on the council sometimes. This is part of it, and this is why. There's a more sinister plot to this, and you saw it with... I saw it. I don't know if some of the people I was discussing this with today watched it happen. With gay marriage, when that came out, and they used that as an issue. Because at the time, public support for it was very much against. And ultimately, people changed quite a bit as the discussions happened. But it won them a number of elections as a divisive issue to get their base fired up. And to also swing the mushy middle that didn't really care that much. And so that's one of the things why Bannon tries to do this kind of stuff. And why it can be effective, I think. Anyway. Speaking of which, we haven't heard much about North Korea's nuclear missiles. They should have a nuclear missile on an ICBM probably within the year, is what we're thinking. The current situation there also is quite interesting because our president had previously, remember, depended on China to solve the problem. Utterly and completely. China needs to solve it. China has since decided that this whole thing, and they actually kind of referred to it dismissively as the "you do it" or something like that policy. They're not down for that really anymore. So we're kind of at this standoff, utterly and completely. So we'll see again some tweets about that at some point when you need that. Oh, also this week we had the testimony again in front of the Senate for more of the Russia investigation, where you see some of the principals talking about this major meeting. And not the focus of reporting again today. So I think this is going to be difficult. And now as I see it and see these news cycles go over and over and over and see how good they are at moving to the next one and definitely manipulating this. Again, you can't dismiss their skill at this when it got him into the presidency. So there's this ability to avoid substance on a level that is quite profound. I've got a solution. I'll get to it later. At the end of the show in about 5 minutes or so. I guess I'm done with all the serious stuff. I think, for the most part. I was going to say, because I was looking at it today, so it's kind of top of mind for the week, the eclipse that's coming up. The total solar eclipse. It's going to be quite a show if you get a chance. We were making plans for it. Looks like we're going to go hang out up north for a little bit and try and get there from the north. Traffic's probably going to be pretty ridiculous in most places, especially along the East Coast. In places where there's there's nothing around here. Should be easy to get there. Well, there's no roads there either. So how do you get there on that one little road that everybody else is using? So everybody within a few hundred miles will be like, oh yeah, let's drive. So you'll see there'll be a lot of news stories about the traffic jams on that. So we're hoping to get there. I'd recommend you do it. It'll be pretty cool. It's something that doesn't happen a lot, and you don't get to see it a lot. So having those kind of moments in nature and time can be kind of fun. They have been, throughout human history, been really pretty profound. So it's supposed to be pretty cool too. Apparently and it's going to happen here roughly right around noon. So it'll be pretty bright in the day. Hopefully, we'll see. Unless there's clouds, right? So that's what happens on that stuff. So try and see the eclipse if you get a chance. It should be fun. So been a little disjointed tonight, sorry, like I said. Doing a Wednesday catch-up. Tomorrow's distraction is going to be, and I'll tell you this, because it's going to be, everybody's going to be like, what? Whoa, what did he do yesterday? Well, what's going to do tomorrow? Well, what did he do today? Actually, at the end of the day, we have a new Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom. Can you guess who it is? And I'm not joking. This came out from the White House near the end of the day. Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom. Coming from an administration, again, that's tried to ban Muslims from entering the country, is a guy by the name of Samuel Brownback. The former, I guess, gonna be Sam Brownback, the beleaguered, there's that word, governor of Kansas, whose aggressively conservative fiscal policies turned some fellow Republicans against him, will be nominated to serve as ambassador at large for international religious freedom, the White House said in a statement on Wednesday. So, again, this might be one of the more anti-LGBT administrations at least in this century, without a doubt. I think. Although, again, Republicans have always been like this when they gain power. So I hope that's not too much of a surprise and news to everyone. But it is how they've been for a long time. It was interesting to see the pushback from both Orrin Hatch and John McCain on the president's tweets about banning transgender service in the military. I don't. That's odd. When you see Orrin Hatch come out in defense of that. I don't know. There's some really strange things. I still think the Senate's just in this really strange place, which needs, I think, more focus from a lot of folks, because these laws and how they do it, it does matter, and it does affect us. I mean, anybody who's been affected by the ACA and can now buy insurance, or couldn't before, know somebody who's gotten treated or anything like that. It's anyway. it was passed right before this is our quick ACA story, because that was actually our first daughter was actually covered by both my insurance and my wife's father's insurance, which I don't know if you've ever had two people with insurance, but that means that it actually acts like insurance. But so the ACA helped us with that and my stuff a lot. But anyway, I think it's gonna survive. I don't know. We'll see. The getting rid of what the idea, and this is, we're going to loop back to my top story, which I do think is what's happening in the Senate with the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, which they're trying to turn into something else. I do think they're going to be able to pass something that's going to try and get rid of those mandates and taxes, which will hurt the way the law works. So it'll be really bad for some folks, but not as bad as a full repeal would be, and it will still leave a lot more possibility to fix it in the future. If they get a bigger repeal, then it's going to be harder, I think. I don't know. There's a big push now for the whole Medicare for All movement. I think and I mentioned this the other day, that over half the Democratic caucus signed on to the bill. One of the bills for the Medicaid for All. So, and that's becoming so much of a consensus now on the left. So I think, there's this place which is really odd. I don't know. This is kind of the best case scenario here. I guess the best case scenario is them totally failing to pass anything. But I don't know if that can happen. There'd be so many tweets needed to keep that from people realizing. Alright, kind of trailing off, getting a little bit late, not too focused. I'm eating ice. That's gotta be fun for you, my listeners. Anyway, so I'll try and do something again next week. Again, we've got the whole Game of Thrones going on Sundays, so we're moving to Mondays for the next, 2 months maybe? How much are they playing this out this season? Who knows? Alright, so peace out. Thanks anybody who dropped by and saw me rambling and lost. Anyway, see you next time, and have a good evening. Oh, there was that thing. What to do See, as you thought I was going to let you know, some even gave me like the thumbs and signed off. Which actually helps me do this by myself since there's nobody watching. What we need to do is organize. Period. Get out in the streets and stop him from returning home when he leaves home, which is the White House, and just have a bunch of people parked around there. So I'm going to keep an eye out for when somebody starts to organize that, and if I don't see one soon, I'm going to see what I can do about making that happen. But that's how it happens outside of elections. If it's not mass protests that cause a resignation or gets the Senate's full attention, he's not going anywhere, and we're all going down with him. You gotta smile. Alright, peace out, y'all. Have a good night.